Hey, this is Wes Candle with AE Tuts. Today we're going to use some simple animation techniques, and we're going to create this.
You show what I did, you hold, I commit, you take what I owe.
Alright, well, I should rephrase. We're not going to create that entire 15-second piece, but what I am going to do is I'm going to show you how. Okay, I'm going to lay down the groundwork so that you're able to basically do exactly what I did. Now, the first thing we're going to look at is how I did this kind of growing geometric pattern. And let's just analyze it a little bit. I'm going to have to avoid trying to point with my finger and remember to use the mouse. But if you look kind of right here, okay, you can sort of see that this, or actually it'll be easier if you look over here. You can see that one triangle appears to be growing out of another. Okay, I'm just going to scroll back and you can see that again. Now, this actually really is not hard to do at all. Okay, and I'm just going to show you exactly how I did it. First thing I did is I went into Illustrator, and I actually clicked on the pen tool, okay, and I just chose probably red, and I just drew a triangle. Okay, no big deal. Go ahead and command click, and that'll bring you back to your selection tool, and you can click off of it to deselect, and we'll click on yellow, and we will just draw another triangle. And again, I wasn't going for anything, you know, perfect. Just wanted it to look random and geometric. Let's choose green. And we'll do a green triangle. Command click off of it, and we'll do a blue triangle. And again, I'm not going to go through and create that entire piece because honestly, it takes forever to do this. But you will know exactly how I did it at the end of this tutorial. Okay, so now that we've got our four triangles drawn, let's go ahead and hit V to go back to the selection tool. And where I would go from here is right into After Effects with this Illustrator file. But if I did, because this is only on one layer, even though Illustrator breaks up all these colors into separate objects, and Illustrator and After Effects are made by the same company and everything like that, After Effects still won't see these as separate objects, unfortunately. That'd be kind of nice, actually, but they don't. So you actually have to go into the Layers palette and separate these guys into separate layers. There are two ways to do this. There's the fast way and the slow way, okay? And the fast way, not a whole lot of people know about for some reason, because this actually isn't common that you have to do this, at least for me. But I'll show you the slow way, and then show you how fast you can do this. It's not going to be a big deal to do the slow way with these four guys, but as you can imagine, what you have to do is create a new layer, and you can actually click on this little colorful box here. You can drag that box a new layer, and what was selected is now part of that layer. Okay, I could then go to the green, create a layer for the green one, drag the box into that layer, and so on and so forth until I have all four layers separated. Now, that's all well and good when you have four pieces to separate, okay? But when we get into the text aspect of this tutorial, you're literally going to have 100, 200 triangles that you need to separate into layers in order to be able to manipulate them inside of After Effects. Now, that's ridiculous. It would just take forever. It'd take an hour just to separate them into layers. Thankfully, Illustrator, I'm going to toss this layer here. Thankfully, Illustrator has a tool to separate these guys. So what you have to do is just do what I did, draw a bounding box around there, highlight them, and go into the Layers palette, and there's this little menu up in the top right corner. Click on it and hit Release to Layers Sequence. Okay, Release to Layers Build is slightly different, and what it'll do is it'll have, well, it's kind of complicated. I'm not going to go into it. Check it out on your own. All right, now that we've got these layers separated, it's still actually not going to do you any good because they're just sub-layers of this master layer, okay? And I actually went through and tested this, and I found out that After Effects still won't see these guys as separated unless you click on the first one, shift-click, and then just drag these guys out of the main layer into their own separate layers, and then just toss this, okay? And then for kind of ease of animation when we get into After Effects. We'll go ahead and name these guys. Now, it'd be nice if all these these colors matched, but it doesn't really matter actually because After Effects doesn't use these colors. So okay, now that we've got them all separated into layers and everything is fine, I've already saved this file, so I'm just going to hit Command S to save over it, and it was saved as Geometrika triangles. So we'll go back into After Effects, and the way you bring in a layer from Illustrator is you double click in the project window in kind of an open area. So we'll just double click there and click on Geometrika triangles. Now, there's one thing that you need to pay attention to here, the Import As drop-down. Okay, you've got Footage, Composition, and Composition Crop Layers. We're going to choose Composition Crop Layers. Now, the difference between Composition and Composition Crop Layers is if you click on Composition, okay, all of the layers will actually come in at the same size as your artboard in Illustrator. Okay, and the artboard in that file was actually 1280 by 720. All right, so the bounding box surrounding each layer would actually be 1280 pixels wide by 720 high. Okay, and you'd have your actual object somewhere in the middle of that. The anchor point would be in the center, and it wouldn't surround it at all. If you choose Composition Cropped Layers, the bounding box will actually surround only the triangle in that layer, okay? And that's what we want. We don't want to be dealing with, you know, trying to animate these kind of rectangles the whole day. All right, so anyways, it's not a big deal. You can always, we're going to be changing the anchor point anyways, and you could change the anchor point, but just choose Composition Cropped Layers. But now you know what that is. So hit open and double click right here on Geometrika Triangles, and we have our composition with all the separated layers. And as you can see, we named them in Illustrator and they were brought in nicely into After Effects. Okay, first thing we need to do is change the anchor point. Let's look at the original. And you can see that the triangles are forming right out of the center of the triangle that grew in previously. So there's one about to come in right here, okay? So that means the anchor point, and the way we do this is actually the scale. We animate the scale value. That means the anchor point is right in the center, and it's animating from 0 to 100% of scale. All right, so it's just tiny and visible, and then it blows up and becomes visible, and it just does that right from the center. So that's what we're going to go and do, is we're going to change the anchor point on all these guys to the base, okay? And the way that you do that is we actually use the pan behind tool, which is located right here, all right? But instead of going up and clicking on this every time I want to use it, a really quick way to do this is actually to hit and hold down the Y button on your keyboard, okay? And that brings up the pan behind tool. And if you don't just hit it and let go, it doesn't change it permanently. So I just click and hold, drag it down, and let go, and it becomes my selection tool again. So I can select the yellow, click and hold Y, and move the pan behind, and so on and so forth. So we'll do that to green, and then to blue. All right. Now, as I said before, we're animating the scale to make these guys look like they're growing, okay? But before we do that, we need to actually parent each one to the one previous to it, okay? And these are going to grow in sequence, so they're going to go red, yellow, green, blue, okay? So we need to make sure they're parented in that order. And the way that you parent something is you actually go to this little area right here. And this kind of squiggly line is actually called the pick whip. And if you grab this pick whip, click on it, see that kind of string coming off the end? That's the, I guess, the pick whip, okay? And you can actually, I'm on the yellow layer here. I want the yellow to be parented to the red. So I drag that pick whip right onto red. And this will actually transfer all of red's animation properties to yellow, okay? And make it so that if I scaled red from 0 to 100, the yellow will go with it. In fact, let me go ahead and show you that. Click on red and hit S, and you'll see that as I adjust the scale, it adjusts both yellow and red. Okay, now that's how parenting works. Yellow is a child of red, so yellow follows red wherever it goes, just like a child follows its parent. Now we want that to go all the way down the chain. We want green to follow yellow and blue to follow green. So now if I adjust red, all of them follow. Now green is not following red, okay, it's actually following yellow, but because yellow is following red, it just does the same thing. Now, we're going to animate all these scales in sequence, so let me just show you, and you'll see kind of where the magic happens here. All right, first thing we need to do, let's highlight them all and hit S to bring up scale. And let's just go ahead and drop them all down to 0. So you just click on one of them. Since they're all highlighted, you hit 0, it'll change them all. All right. Now, we're going to adjust red's scale property first. So click on this little stopwatch icon here next to scale, and that will create a keyframe. And since it's already at 0, it creates a keyframe at 0. And let's have this last, I guess, 5 frames. The growth will last for 5 frames. So in order to go forward 5 frames, hold down Command and hit the right arrow. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 frames forward. Click on scale. We'll type in 100. Okay. Now, just so you can see, the anchor point is where it was growing out of. This is why we changed the anchor point. So it's growing out of the base. All right. So now we just need to have, basically, when this animation is finished, we'll have the next animation start. So we're already on that last keyframe. So we'll hit the stopwatch, go 5 frames forward, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Click on the scale value, type in 100, and we'll just repeat this process. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, now we've got all this keyframed, and we'll just show you what this does. All right, well, that's what it looks like, okay? And as you can see, that's exactly what's happening here. And all I did was I created several versions of this, okay? And you can actually see what that looks like. These guys, this is one of the ones I actually created for that comp, all right? You can see all the layers. There's a bunch. I think 20 total. And I just went through and did this exact same process, only with 20 layers instead of 4. Okay, and then I think I made 4 of those triangle compositions, and then just layered them one on top of the other so that they grew in sequence. So no big deal there. All right. Now, the second part of the composition that we're going to work on is actually right here, and it's the name. All right. Now, this text is going crazy, but it perfectly matches what I was doing with those triangles. Now, when I first had this idea, I was like, okay, what font am I going to use? You know, like, I want to be creative with my font choices. It needs to match kind of the look and feel of this idea that I have. And thankfully, I got onto a website called dafont.com. That's DAFONT.com. And I was able to find this font. The font is called Belfast. And let's just do, we'll do an L. Okay, and we'll make it big. Actually, let's do a lowercase r. Hit T, you can highlight it, and let's change it to an R. There we go. That'll be a little more interesting. Okay, now we really just need to reproduce that same process that we went through earlier with the triangles. So instead of drawing the triangles, we've got this type, and I'm just going to show you how to turn a type object into an actual editable object inside of After Effects, and then separate them into layers. Okay, the first thing you need to do is actually go to Type, and then Create Outlines. And keyboard shortcut for that is Shift-Command-O. Okay, so that's gone ahead and separated all these guys into outlines. And then you go in and you highlight the last group. And I'm not sure why it does 3 groups here, but you got to highlight the last group and release layers to sequence. Okay, and then do the same thing we did earlier. Shift click and drag all these guys out of the composition. Delete the remaining layers, and you've got your layers separated. Okay, then all you have to do is go through and change the color. And again, I literally just went down the swatch list and clicked straight down the line for this, which would normally kind of be a crazy idea, but I usually go through some color correction processes that kind of brings all the colors into a same range anyways. So I'll show you guys that at the kind of the very end. All right, so there we go. We'll go ahead and save this guy as Geometrika R. Hit save. Nothing special at this point. And we'll go back into After Effects. All right, now let's bring that in. Double click on the project window and click on Geometrika R, import as composition cropped layers, and open. And we'll go double click, and now we just basically need to set these guys up in the same way that we did the other one. All right, the first thing we need to think about now that we've got this in our composition is we need to think about the way that this is going to interact. Okay, we're going to be using parenting on these triangles in the same way that we did the abstract triangles. So I want to have an anchor point for this entire letter. Okay, and I think I'm going to use this triangle down here. Now, unfortunately, Illustrator brings these files in kind of wonky, so I have to go through and figure out which one's which, and you got to kind of turn one off. And okay, layer 8 is our red triangle. Okay, so this is actually going to be the base layer, so I'm going to go ahead and bring it up to the top, and I think layer 7 was the other one, and we'll just start sequencing these guys so it goes red, yellow, green, blue, and basically I follow a linear pattern in the actual layers of the timeline that correlates with the direction that I want the animation in the R to take. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and we'll time lapse forward here. Okay, now I've gone ahead and reordered all these triangles so they follow a logical sequence, and I'll just walk you through what I did. We're going to go from red to yellow to green to blue to pink, and this red triangle will be parented to the pink, and this one will be parented obviously to this one, and we'll also have this orange triangle parented to the pink as well, and then this orange to that one, and this one to this one, and this one to this one. Okay, so basically I'm just trying to follow a pattern in my parenting scheme, and I've just gone through and organized this in a way that will make that easy to think about. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. So we've got level 8, and we're going top to bottom. Okay, so we've got level 8 here as our anchor. Level 7 is the yellow layer, so we'll parent that one. Green to the yellow, blue to the green, dark blue to the light blue, and then the pink to the dark blue. And then we can keep going up here, red to pink, kind of that burnt orange to the red. And then this one needs to actually go to the pink again. So the pink layer was 12, pink layer was 11. Okay, so that's done, and we just kind of go right on down the line and finish this off. Okay, so now that they're all parented together, like I said earlier, these animations are going to directly affect the child to the parent. Okay, so that's where a lot of the power and what we're doing comes from. Okay, it's kind of that exponential growth that occurs. Like if I animate the percentage of scale on all these guys at once, this one will be going from 0 to 100. Okay, but since this is parented, it's going 0 to 100 as well. All right, but if I have this one animating from 0 to 100 at the same time that this one does, this one will actually go to like 200%. And I'm not sure if the math on that is correct. And this one would be like 400 and 800 and 1600 and so on and so forth until you got these huge numbers and huge sizes. So it actually looks like it's jumping forward off the page. That actually brings up another thing. It may appear that there's some 3D stuff happening here because it looks like they're kind of coming forward at the camera. Well, this is completely 2D. There's absolutely no 3D camera in this piece. All of that is just being produced by this parenting that and animation of scale values and rotation values. Okay, and then some stylistic things that we'll go through at the very end. But really, this is very, very simple, okay, to pull off. It's just kind of time-consuming to set up. But that's kind of how I like to do things. I like to take my time, set it up correctly, and then just play around, okay, once I'm in the animation phase. Because that's when the emotion and the listening to the music and kind of causing things to dance to, that's where that happens. You don't want to get bogged down by this kind of technical stuff when you're in the middle of that. So be sure to set up your composition in a way that you can just have fun and play in your animation. Okay? All right. So now let's go ahead and adjust these anchor points so that they operate in the correct way. The letters are not going to be growing on in the same way that these guys did. Okay, the letters actually just get big and normal size. I guess is the only other way to say it. Big and normal size. So we're not going to have them growing out of the center. They're just going to be kind of rotating around each other. So I'm going to actually put the anchor points in a little bit different place. So we're looking at the red here. And again, we hit Y, hit and hold Y, and that brings up our pan behind. And I'm going to change the anchor point to kind of this bottom corner, okay? Because I want the yellow to rotate around. Actually, the red, this is the base one, so it'll be down here, okay? But I want this yellow one, I want this one to rotate around this corner, kind of like Pac-Man. Okay, so let me go ahead and bring up rotate, and you can see hit R, bring up rotate, and you can see it's kind of hinging on that edge. Okay, just, you know, kind of varying things up a little bit. We'll hit R again to get rid of that. Now we're on green. Hit Y for pan behind, and we'll have it anchor on the tip of the yellow. And again, this is completely subjective, so you can do literally whatever you want. So I'm just gonna kind of follow that same pattern. And I've done other things too. The anchor points have been on opposite corners, and it really is up to you. Whatever you want to do. I think I sound like Bob Ross right there. It's your canvas, your world. Sorry. And last but actually put the anchor point up here. Last but not least, the yellow. All right. Now just to show you what we did, we'll highlight all of them. Let's hit R, and we'll just animate the rotation value at the same time. And now we get kind of this, you know, it's going outside of the bounding box of the composition, but that's okay. This is just going to get dropped into another composition later. But yeah, that's what we're doing. And if we bring up scale, you can kind of see what I was talking about, kind of that exponential growth. The scale value is building on the one previous to it. All right. Now, on a technical note, notice this. As these guys get close, look at the edge of this blue. It's kind of got that stair-stepping. That's called rasterization, okay? And that is like immediate sign of someone being amateur at this, okay? The way that you get rid of this is you kind of hit this toggle right here. And this is the collapse transformations toggle, all right? And what that basically does is it causes After Effects to reference the original Illustrator file and redraw from that every time. And since Illustrator is what's called a vector, it's using math to create these shapes. You're going to have a crisp and clean image right up until the end. You see it's getting blurry, but then it'll read it again and it's perfectly smooth. So we'll go back to 100. And it's all set up. All right. Now, let's create a new composition. Click on the composition. We'll do 1280 by 720 square pixels. And let's drop our Geometrika R layer right in here. All right. Now, we're going to go ahead and do collapse transformations on this. And it has kind of another side effect as well. Let me go back into this and we'll animate all these scale values again. And I'll show you kind of what else this does. We'll go up a little bit. As you can see, it's cut off here. Normally, it would be cut off in the, oh, here we go. Normally, it would be cut off if the collapse transformations is not selected. So if you select that, it'll actually make it so you can animate outside of the bounding box. Okay. Now, Let me just bring this back to 100. And now you know how I set it up. Now I've gone ahead and set up an entire series of these guys somewhere. Let me just find it real quick. Using AE Tuts. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to name this comp 3. We'll name this as final. Hit enter. Oops. Select on it. Hit enter. Type in final render. And we'll go ahead and remove the R. And we'll drop letters master into it. Now again, let me just show you this. This is about how complicated things can get. We're going to look at this, and I'm going to show you a couple other tricks that I did to kind of help organize. One thing you can do, since we're looking just at the layers right now, is you can hit the tilde key, which is right above the tab key on the left side. If you hit tilde while your mouse is over the timeline, it'll actually bring this timeline area to full screen. Now you can see kind of how complicated this composition can get. I mean, there are so many layers here. So you just have to really, really keep organized. And this would really just become a mess if I didn't do what I did here. And I'm going to show you exactly what it is. But first, let me kind of point out exactly what you're looking at. I named this right here plus master. And since we've got AE Tuts plus, we're going to, you know, one of the letters was plus. So this is the master triangle. Okay. And everything below it is parented to the master. Okay. Now what I did is I actually parented the master to a controller. Okay, to actually 2 controllers. I wanted to be able to control the kerning on these guys. So what I did is I actually created a null object. Okay, and what you can do is click in an open area, right click, hit new, and null object, and I literally just named it. Hit enter, and I named it plus underscore position. Okay, and I parented this master, the position of the master triangle, to the plus position. And the way that I did that is I option clicked on the stopwatch, and I pick whipped the null object. Okay, so it was as simple as that. And remember, since animating the position of let me go ahead and delete this so things don't get confusing. Since animating the position of the master affects all the others, I'm literally able to control the entire composition of that letter, all those triangles, by adjusting the position of these guys. So as you can see, I'm moving adjusting the spacing here, which is what I wanted to be able to do. Okay, so that's one way you can kind of keep these part of it organized. The second thing is I actually created a adjustment layer called Chaos Control. Okay, and I'll just show you exactly what I did here. Right click in an open area, we'll hit New Adjustment Layer. And the reason why I named it Chaos Control is basically because this animation is just kind of chaotic, and I needed to be able to control it in a way. And I don't want to have to go into each of these master layers just to animate one parameter. So what I did is I parented all of that animation to one slider. And the way that I did that is, let's go ahead and I brought up that adjustment layer, hit enter, we'll rename it just Chaos so we can differentiate between the two. And you can go over into Effects and Presets and type in Slider, okay, and double click on it. And it's actually, this is a really, really effective tool to be able to control animations. This is just an obligatory slider that basically does nothing until you attach it to something else. So basically, I took the slider control and I parented, you can actually rename these too, which is important. I renamed this one Scale Control, and I parented the scale of all of these layers, every single one. We'll just bring up just a random one, Chaos Control, and the Scale Control slider. So I'm literally controlling the scale using these sliders, and all of them are attached that same way. So if I scale it up, you can see I'm controlling every single one all at once with no problem at all. Okay. And then also I did the same thing. I parented the rotation parameter. Click on the plus master again, hit R, and we'll twirl down here. And you can see that my rotation parameter on the plus master, as well as all the layers below it, are parented to the rotation control slider, okay, which is right here. Right now, the way that I do that is I'll just create we'll just do a right click in an open area, hit new, and then solid, and we'll just make it red. And we'll just lower the comp size so it's not I don't want it to take up the entire composition. Okay, so we've got this kind of random, we'll solo it. We've got this kind of random square, and I want to parent it to the chaos controller. I'm going to delete this guy actually. I want to parent to the chaos controller. We'll bring down our effects. We've got scale control slider and rotation control slider. Okay. What I need to do is hit R for rotation, hold down shift, and hit scale, and that'll bring up both of these guys. Hit S, sorry, to bring up scale. And what you do is you option click on the stopwatch that you use to create keyframes, and that opens up an expressions window. Now you don't actually even need to know what to type in here. You use this pick whip again, and all you do is go directly from the scale parameter in the solid to the scale slider under our chaos control. Okay, and it goes in and fills out all this information for you. You know, you don't have to know any code, and now the scale of this is attached to the scale slider. So when I slide the slider, it's sliding the scale. So basically, I can go through and attach, and you just do the same thing right here. Okay, so basically, I can go through and attach these values to one parameter, and I don't have to dig through my timeline hundreds of layers in order to animate this stuff. Okay, so it's just about being efficient. You can get this done without using expressions and things like that, but if you use these expressions and you use kind of these organizational tools, okay, you can get things done a lot quicker in the end, and it's just worth going through and setting them up. All right, now now that I've showed you how I rigged this, I'm just going to kind of tell you exactly how I made all this stuff. All right. Again, this is literally a repetition of that previous part where I made a couple sections grow out and I layered them over and over again. And that right there, that kind of cringing, is just adjusting the rotation value. All right. And then go to the letters. Let's make this a little bigger. And then I just rotated the rotation value here and the scale value, animated them both at the same time. So they rotated and scaled up, and then scaled back and forth. All right. Nothing complicated about this. All right. This is, and you can choose any piece of music that you want, okay, to go with this. And this is just, you know, unless you use the exact piece of music, going through and animating all this for you won't do you any good. So pick out a piece of music, and you can use the same techniques to do exactly what I did. Now, just at the end here, I'm just going to show you exactly how I did the color correction, in case you want to get this same look. Okay. What I had is we did a background layer, so I'll hit Command Y to do a solid, and the background was actually just black. I'll hit OK. I'll bring that to the bottom, hit enter, name it background, and then I had a gradient overlay. And what we'll do is just ramp. Type in ramp and effects and presets, and we'll actually have to bring up another solid. So hit Command Y, hit enter, and just double click ramp. And we'll change that to a radial. Okay, and you can actually control where the center of it is using this guy right here. You don't have to click anything special. You can just click on it with the selection tool. And mine was, let's see, I think it was white, and it went out to like a purple color, which might seem a little weird, but that's what I did. And let's see here. I think I changed the overlay mode to hard light. And the opacity, let's change that a little bit. You can hit T to bring up opacity. We'll lower that to like 19 or 20. So you can kind of see it's not as weird as it was initially going to seem there, okay? But the reason why I actually added that gradient, let me just explain this, is I want there to be a slight variation in color from the center to the outside, okay? I don't want it to be the same yellow in the center as it is on the outside. And what that does is it's actually very pleasing to the eye, because nothing in life, like if you look at the wall in the office or wherever it is you're sitting right now, you'll notice that the color in the top left-hand corner is not the same color in the bottom right-hand or in the center, okay? And that's just because light falls in a different way, and we just want to reproduce that in our animation, okay? And the more that we do that, the more people are going to accept what we've made as being more organic, okay? Even though this is a very digital feeling, you still want to kind of bring them in and make it feel safe and warm, okay? And that's ultimately what that does. Okay, so now that we've got this, we'll go ahead and hit enter and name this guy, we'll just name it gradient overlay. All right. The next thing I did is I actually added a little bit of a vignette over the top, okay? So we'll just, let's see, we'll hit Command Y, sorry, and create another solid. And go up to the shape layer and select the ellipse tool. All right. Now instead of just going out here and drawing a circle, like Command Z, you can actually double click it and immediately fill the circle. All right. And all it does is creates a mask, and you're masking out the black color. So let's go ahead and hit subtract instead of adding. So we've got that outer corner, and we'll go into the mask parameters down here, and let's just feather that thing. So we're feathering the edges. We don't want it to be a solid line. And we'll change the blending mode to, let's see, we'll change the blending mode to classic color burn. And we'll bring the opacity down just a little bit. Hit T to bring up opacity. We'll just kind of lower that just slightly. Okay. Now, oh, before I forget, one thing that's really important to do with these letters, okay, we'll go back into letters master. You want to make sure that all of them, that the overlay mode is add, okay? So we'll hit toggle switches, and you just got to make sure you switch all these guys to add, okay? Because they will overlap. In fact, let's go into the chaos control. We'll hit the rotation slider, and we'll rotate these guys. I want them to interact with each other, okay, as they lay over top. All right, you don't want them to be just covering each other with no interaction at all. Okay, so just make sure that they're changed to add, and everything will look cool. All right, now we'll change the. Let's see. Let's add one more color. Let's add one more layer, and we'll just do an adjustment layer. So right-click, new, adjustment layer. And we'll use tint because it's a little highly saturated for my taste, and we will bring that color down to 53%. Now I'm reading off of my original file here right now, so that's why I keep kind of pausing and looking, but I'm kind of desaturating it a little bit using tint. You can kind of see what I'm doing there. The higher it is, the more saturated. The lower it is, the highly saturated. But yeah, I had it set to 53%. And really what I do when I'm doing this is I'll just go through and I'll just kind of slide this slider around until I think it looks good. Okay, there's no science to this. It's literally, is it pleasing to the eye? Okay, is your goal coming across on the screen? All right. The next thing we can do is add a curves layer. And we'll just add it on the same adjustment layer. So double click on that. And I just play around here, and kind of bring the lights up and the darks down, and you can see we're kind of moving closer to the original here. Still not the same color, okay, but we'll get there. Go into the red. Let's bring the red up slightly. Okay, and green we'll bring down. Blue will bring down as well. I don't want there to be too much blue. Oh, and look. Not exactly the same, but pretty close. Okay. Now I could just sit here and play around a little more until we got the exact same thing. But we're looking at you know, almost the exact same color here. Okay. All right. So we've got our color in, and you know how to animate it. But there's one last kind of thing that added a little bit of activity to this guy. All right. And let me just play it again real quick.
You show what I did, you hold, I commit, you take what I owe.
All right. There's actually a directional blur happening. Okay, and it actually looks like it's happening to the beat of the music, but I did not use anything like sound waves or anything like that to kind of time this. I just sort of figured out how many beats there were per second and used the wiggle expression and wiggled the crap out of it. So we'll just I'll show you exactly what I did for that as well. We'll do another adjustment layer. So right click in an open area, adjustment layer. Let's name this one blur. And let's name this one color correction. This one, let's name vignette. It's important to keep all your stuff organized because it can get really confusing if you're not really careful. Okay, so let's type in blur under effects and presets, and we'll do a directional blur. So I double click that, added it to blur, and we're going to add a little expression on both of these parameters, both the direction and the blur length. I'm going to change over time. Okay, option click on the stopwatch, and I believe the direction was, we'll just do wiggle. We're going to use the wiggle expression, again very commonly used. I think it was something like 7 times per second. Let's see, I think 90. I did a full 90 rotation. And then the length, we'll just have that one go wiggle. And we'll have it be 7 as well. And let's go 20 pixels. And we'll do a quick RAM preview. All right. Now you can kind of see there's that blur happening, kind of chaotic. All right. Now, all I would have to do is throw in a couple keyframes here. We'll go to Chaos Control and we'll bring up all of our different sliders here. And just add a keyframe here and a keyframe here, and we'll just do a couple random animations. Nothing too crazy on the rotation value. Kind of want to overshoot it and then bring it back just a tad. 0.5 here. And then again, I'm just picking these randomly. If you have music to go with, then you're you know, a little more in luck here. But since we don't, we'll just play. And just up a little more. -2. And this might look completely ridiculous, but, you know, whatever. You'll be able to take more time than I have to really finesse this. Last but not least, we'll go ahead and highlight all these guys, right-click on them, Keyframe Assistant, and Easy Ease. All right. You really want to use Easy Ease on everything. There's no reason not to. So let's do another RAM preview. Make sure first that our letters master has continuous rasterization going. Collapse transformations button is toggled. And hit 0. All right, and through the miracle of time lapsing, got that. Let's just do a couple small things here. They are not interacting additively for some reason. Let me see if I can figure out why. Oh, because I didn't change them all. All right, I'm just going to highlight all these guys, and we'll change them all to add. That is actually one thing that's really going to help. The other thing is toggle switches and modes, and we want them all to have motion blur. So you click on this little guy, that's the motion blur toggle, but you also have to click right up here to enable motion blur. All right, so go back to the final render, enable motion blur here as well. And we'll do another RAM preview. And through the miracle of time lapse, we've got an animation that looks pretty close to what I did before, but needs a lot of tweaking. So again, feel free to play around with this idea and do whatever fits your needs for it. If you have any questions, post it on the forums. I look at those things, and I'd be glad to answer them for you. You can shoot me an email as well. Be sure to check out my blog at wescandle.com. I hope you enjoyed this one, guys, and I will see you next time.